Welcome to our exploration of Poland's remarkable housing landscape, where an astounding 86% of the population owns their homes as of 2024. In this video, we'll delve into the historical influences that have shaped this impressive homeownership rate, the distinct ownership patterns between urban and rural areas, and the impact of government policies on housing accessibility. We'll also discuss the experiences of young Poles entering the market, the evolving rental sector, and how external factors like migration are making their mark. Join us as we analyze trends, challenges, and the future of homeownership in Poland. 1. A staggering 86%. Poland's latest homeownership rate in 2024. Poland's homeownership rate stands at a remarkable 86% as of 2024, according to the latest data from Eurostat. This places Poland not only among the highest in Europe, but also globally. The figure remains far above the EU average of around 70%, showcasing Poland's unique housing landscape. More than 3 out of 4 Polish citizens live in owner-occupied homes, a number that's barely budged since the early 2010s. In major cities such as Warsaw, Krakow, and Wrocław, ownership rates remain robust despite rapid urbanization. Rural areas still display even higher rates, often exceeding 90%. The persistence of this trend continues to surprise both economists and housing policy experts. 2. Historical roots. How Poland's past shapes its housing market. Poland's high homeownership rate is deeply rooted in its post-communist transformation. After the collapse of the Soviet bloc in 1989, millions of state-owned apartments were privatized and offered to residents at extremely low prices or even for free. By 1995, over 60% of Polish households were already homeowners due to this massive privatization wave. This unique historical event created a generation of Poles with property assets. The cultural legacy of land and home ownership, dating even further back to pre-war times, continues to influence attitudes today. Unlike Western Europe, where renting is common, the Polish mindset often equates success with owning one's home. This historical momentum remains a powerful force in the housing market. 3. The urban-rural divide. Ownership patterns across Poland. The homeownership rate in rural Poland consistently exceeds 90%, while in large metropolitan areas it hovers around 70 to 75%. Rural communities often inherit property through generations, making ownership a family affair. In cities like Warsaw and Gdańsk, high property prices and a growing rental market have slightly lowered the rate, but not enough to change the overall national trend. The government's focus on rural development and infrastructure also supports ownership in less populated regions. Many young families still choose to buy or build homes in smaller towns, escaping high urban costs. Poland's countryside is peppered with single-family homes, contrasting with the apartment blocks typical of urban centers. This duality shapes the national housing narrative. 4. Young Poles and the starter home phenomenon. A striking 65% of Poles aged 25 to 34 own their homes, according to Statistics Poland's 2024 report. This is one of the highest rates for young adults in Europe. Government-backed mortgage programs, such as Safe Credit 2%, launched in 2023, have played a significant role in this trend. These initiatives offer subsidized interest rates to first-time buyers under 45, making it easier for young families to enter the market. Despite rising property prices, young Poles remain determined to own rather than rent. Many receive financial help from parents or inherit property outright. The trend is reinforced by a strong cultural expectation that adulthood means property ownership. This early entry into the market sets Poland apart from much of Western Europe. 5. Rental market. Small, but slowly expanding. Only about 13% of Poles live in rented accommodation, a figure that is slowly increasing but still among the lowest in the EU. Recent data from the Polish Ministry of Development and Technology highlights that private rental supply in major cities has grown by 9% since 2022, driven by urbanization and migration from Ukraine. Despite this, the rental sector remains underdeveloped and often lacks long-term security for tenants. Institutional investors are beginning to develop more build-to-rent projects, especially in Warsaw and Krakow. However, the majority of rental properties are owned by private individuals rather than corporations. The government's support for ownership over renting continues to shape housing policies. 6. Housing affordability. Rising prices and wage growth. According to the National Bank of Poland's housing market report from February 2025, average apartment prices in Warsaw have reached 15,500 Polish zlotys per square meter, marking a 12% year-on-year increase. Nationwide, prices have grown by over 10% annually since 2023. At the same time, average wages rose by 8% in 2024, but home price growth continues to outpace income. Despite this, mortgage accessibility remains comparatively high, thanks to low unemployment and supportive government programs. Many Poles stretch their finances to buy, seeing ownership as a long-term investment. For families in smaller towns, affordability is less of an issue, with average prices often half those of major cities. This gap drives continued migration from city centers to suburban and rural areas. 7. Government policy. Programs fueling homeownership. The Polish government has implemented several initiatives to promote homeownership, most notably the Safe Credit 2% program introduced in mid-2023. It subsidizes mortgage interest rates for first-time buyers, making monthly payments more affordable. Over 60,000 families have used the program within its first year, according to Bank Gospodarstwa Krajowego. Additional policies include the Family on Its Own scheme, which provides subsidies for single parents purchasing homes. In 2024, new legislation was passed to streamline planning permissions and increase the supply of affordable housing plots. Political pressure remains high to prioritize ownership, with major parties pledging further support ahead of the 2025 elections. These policies continue to reinforce the national preference for property ownership. 8. Foreign buyers and the influence of migration. The influx of over 1.5 million Ukrainians since 2022 has influenced Poland's housing market dynamics, especially in the rental sector. While most migrants initially rent, a growing number have begun purchasing properties, particularly in Warsaw and border regions. According to the Ministry of Interior's 2024 report, foreign buyers accounted for 6% of property transactions last year, double the rate from 2021. This has contributed to price increases in certain neighborhoods and increased demand for new developments. The government has responded by loosening some restrictions on foreign property purchases. The trend is expected to continue as migrants settle and integrate into Polish society. 9. Quality and size. What Polish homes look like in 2025. The average Polish apartment is 62 square meters, slightly below the EU average, but the typical single-family house is around 120 square meters. Housing quality has improved steadily over the past decade, with 92% of homes now having central heating and 98% equipped with indoor bathrooms, according to GUS, Statistics Poland. However, overcrowding remains a challenge in urban centers, with nearly 35% of city dwellers living in homes with less than one room per person. The government's push for new housing construction has resulted in a record 240,000 building permits issued in 2024. Energy efficiency standards are also improving, as new regulations require better insulation and greener heating systems. 10. The future outlook. Is Poland's homeownership rate sustainable? Experts warn that while Poland's homeownership rate remains exceptionally high, several pressures could change the landscape. Rapid urbanization, rising prices, and a growing preference among young professionals for rental flexibility may gradually increase the share of renters. According to a 2024 survey by the Institute for Public Affairs, 22% of Poles under 30 now say they would consider renting long-term if quality and security improve. Nevertheless, current government policy and public sentiment continue to overwhelmingly favor ownership. The next few years will test whether Poland's unique housing model can adapt to demographic and economic shifts without losing its global lead in homeownership.